you're allowed to do something, you do it, innit? If you're not gonna, it's like me going in the shop. If I take something and I know that I can get away with it, I'm gonna keep doing it, or I'm just gonna do it without thinking about it.
Maybe they don't understand how the children feel, the children that are left behind. Um, how do the children feel when a father run away, leaving a child behind? Are there some consequences to that in terms of what that child feels? Because I want to, in my ordinary thinking about it, I want to believe that the child want to live with the mother and the father together and able to run from one to the other and talk and just feel the warmth, no? So the question is, do we understand how the children feel about that absence?
I don't think we understand enough, and I don't think that the impact of how children feel when a parent becomes absent is spoken about enough. But I feel like there's so many different issues that kids can go through. They can go through abandonment issues, rejection issues, identity issues, because if you're being created by two people but you only see one on the daily, you lose that other side of who you are. Like, what was they like? What is their personality like? I also feel like single parent children who grow up in single parent homes, they have a different lifestyle. They grow up in a lot of hardship. Not all the time, like obviously it's not always the case. Like some people might have the finances, but in a lot of the situations, they are growing up in poverty. They're growing up with a different environment where they might have a friend at school who's got two parents and they're flying out on holiday like 3 4 times a year, and a child in a single parent home is missing out because they've never been on holiday because their mum is working all the time and she can't afford it. Or it can be fathers in certain cases as well. It's not just always the mum that is the one left, but at the end of the day, it's 90% of the time it is the single mother. But there's just so much, and I feel like as well, because I grew up in a single parent home and I didn't really understand the impacts that it had on me until I was in my 30s, and I was like realized that I've got like attachment issues, I've got um abandonment issues and rejection issues, and it was like all these things, like obviously I've had to face and heal and work through, but I didn't understand what they were, even just living in my masculine as a woman. And because I didn't grow up with a father who made me feel safe, so I was always in that alpha mode of like how I saw my mum just always being in that masculine role all the time. So there's so much impact that it has not having both parents involved. Like, I'm not saying even that you have to be in the same household, because sometimes it doesn't work, but just having a good enough co-parenting relationship and seeing your child, like having that stability, that consistency in your child's life makes a huge difference in their life. Because even just because fortunate for me, like my son's father did sort of re-engage after like 6 years. He came back around 5.5 years. He came back in our son's life, and it was really difficult at first because he was just he didn't want to commit. He didn't want to like put any sort of solid contact order in place and things like that. But then now, fortunately, they do have a solid relationship. And I always look at my son and think like, who would he be? Like, who would he be what would he be missing out on, like not having his dad around? Because in the first few years, it was just me. So he was a lot sort of, I'd say, was a lot more softer, and just he didn't have certain traits of the male, that because I can't teach him to be a man, so he didn't have that. And I was just so fortunate that obviously now he's got his dad, and I see that side of him that is like his dad, because he can get that mirroring from his father, which is, it's just so important to have both parents, I feel, in your life.
It's so important. It's so critical. That is why I'm thinking that this film is going to go places. Of course, it depends also on your story, the story you tell on it, because this is very powerful. It's a very powerful story, and it's so important also. This these men that go away. Anyway, I'm trying to understand if you the kind of question that you ask when you were gathering the information together to make the film. Is it out of pure wickedness? They are just wicked that they run away, abandoning their children. And your story, you are looking at the disappearance, no? The
Yeah.
man that is disappearing. So, are they disappearing because they are wicked, or is there any rational justification for it?
I think some men can be quite obviously evil because they do it out of spite. Like some men want you to suffer, like they want you to struggle. They know it's gonna be harder for you to do anything as a single mum because you got twice the work and it's gonna be slow. Like even if I had my my son's father around earlier on, I could have been a lot more ahead in my career because everything gets slowed down. So I think there is a side of it where it's about control. But as well, again, sometimes I just feel like they just, because it's acceptable and nobody says anything and there's no punishment for it, they can just do it. Like, even though I believe that there's karma, like, I believe that men who abandon their children will have severe karma, and it might not be when kids are young, but definitely at some point that karma is going to come around because I've seen it. Like, I grew up in the 80s, and absent dads was like, it was a thing. Men were having kids. It was the sort of Rasta culture. They was having kids everywhere. Like, my dad's got about 15 kids.
No way.
Yeah, and but you see them now, like you see those same men now, and they're like homeless and like living with incurable diseases and stuff like that. Like I believe like you cannot abandon your seed and have a fruitful life. That's just me. That's what I personally believe. But I feel like the main reason why like men can just squander and not like look back is because they can. So there's actually a law in Lagos where you get punished for abandonment.
Lagos, Nigeria.
Yeah.
Okay.
A woman was abandoned and she changed the law because she got pregnant and this guy just left her and abandoned her, and then they changed the law. I don't know how forceful it is, but if you look it up, because this is when I first wrote my film, I was doing research because initially I was going to change the law in the UK to make it a punishment to abandon your child.
I feel it is terrible, no, for a
Yeah,
child to grow up without the to grow up. Not that one is dead, but it's alive, is somewhere.
yeah.
How do you do that? Now, how do you tell the story? Okay, now I'm asking you, Aisha, how do you tell the story? What do you tell your son about the father who is not there, that is a good man? If you tell him that he's a bad man, you are planting an image in his head. Is that going to have any consequences or not? Are you going to tell him that he's a bad man? What are you going? How are you going to frame the story?
No, I
Let me
think
understand that.
what in you're talking about my film or in just in real life?
No, not just in general, in real life. I mean, am trying to see that that is very delicate there.
I just feel like for me, I feel like you should not talk bad about the other parent, regardless of their actions, because it's not your job to paint that picture to the child. The child will see it for themselves. So really, it is difficult. It's a very difficult question when a child says, "Where's my dad?" Like, how do you answer that question when you don't know yourself half the time where they are? But the most you can say is you don't know. Like your dad right now is away, or do you get what I mean? I just feel like don't put a negative on it. Don't ever paint a bad picture because allow your child to find out for themselves because they will. Kids will find out for themselves. They will eventually find out. Like I grew up without my dad around, and then what by the time I hit like 12, 13, I started to hear stories about who he was, and that wasn't ever from my mum.
Anyway, I look at it as a complicated story to be told, no?